Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Business Matters. We're recording this at the Wind Technology Studio at the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce, and we want to thank our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union. My name is Scott Rogers. I'm Vice President, Governmental Affairs at the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce, and our guest for this segment is Stephanie Hirsch. Stephanie is the Eau Claire City Manager, a position she's held since April of 2022. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What we try to do in a segment like this is to really talk about your personal story and also how it relates to our business community and our city. So let's start out maybe learning a little bit more about you. What was the path that brought you to being the city manager here in Eau Claire?
So I grew up in Eau Claire, as you mentioned. It was born in 1970. So grew up in the 70s and 80s in Eau Claire, and it was a really fantastic place to be a child. And that was in large part because there was such a strong and large middle class, and there were very many caring adults who spent a lot of their energy investing in our local organizations and businesses and schools, and as well as just keeping an eye on the neighbor child or inviting them to dinner. And so it was a great place to be a child because it really gave us a chance to just play and not worry about too much of what was going on and to feel supported by the whole community. And then after childhood, of course, I lived in different parts of the country. And in my 20s, I worked in two communities that were really struggling. And that was in North Philadelphia in the beginning of the 90s, which was really the peak of both the crack epidemic and as well as the AIDS epidemic before there was any kind of treatment for AIDS. And it was incredibly eye-opening to me as a person coming from a pretty sheltered community to be working in that context. And I also worked in rural Georgia where there was very high levels of poverty. And I got interested in the idea of how basically there's a kind of inefficiency that happens in government service delivery and social service delivery that leads to really heartbreaking outcomes. So even though a lot of money is spent, it's spent in the wrong places and people's lives go they're not able to thrive, they're not able to care for their own families, they're not able to stay healthy, and they're not able to be happy. And I became interested in trying to figure out how could I work within government to create the tools that makes government more rational and makes it work better so that everybody is able to thrive, most especially those people who may have historically been poorly served by government institutions, or people who are most dependent on government service delivery in order to do okay. And so I went to different kinds of schools to gain those tools, and then I eventually ended up in both. I worked in the Boston Police Department, and I ended up in Somerville, Massachusetts, where I was for about 16 years, working very closely with the mayor of Somerville as well as the superintendent of the schools to try to improve how local government delivered services. So it was really rationalizing, bringing lots of the tools from the business world and from any kind of place that has good ideas into municipal government to make it run as smoothly and as efficiently as possible for the purpose specifically of improving life outcomes and the joy, well-being, peace of mind of every resident who lives in the community. And then to continue on, I had been there a long time. My family kind of had the stars aligned that we would have a chance to move back to Eau Claire. We were very regular guests to Eau Claire. It was kind of our second home because we visited often my parents. So it was for us, my family, I have 3 kids, they considered Eau Claire to be kind of like vacation land. And we had an opportunity to move back to Eau Claire, and it just so happened it was really the first day of the pandemic in the Boston area, which was March 13th, Friday the 13th. And we heard the news through the grapevine that the airports were going to shut down, which didn't actually happen. And my husband and I just looked at each other. We said, we need to go, because I didn't want to be on the other side of the country from my parents if there really was going to be a sustained period of lockdown. And so we really just pushed everything into the basement and got on a flight the next morning at 4:30 in the morning and ended up in Eau Claire. And so it's been about 2.5 years.
So coming to Eau Claire, how was that change for your family and for you as well in making that adjustment?
Well, my daughter, who's now 16, she said, "Mom, you can move." We had talked about moving to Eau Claire for many years. And she said, we can move before I start high school or after I leave the home, but you can't leave when I'm in the middle of high school. Little did we know there was going to be a pandemic. But so there was some negotiating, such as that we would foster as many cats and dogs from the Humane Association as my kids wanted. So, in fact, right now we have 4 cats at our house, and I think we've had about 40 total since we've moved here. So there was some negotiation. And another funny aspect of moving here is that, of course, when we always came here for vacations, we have all these traditions, and we had this list that we would do, sort of like the Visit Eau Claire list. We'd look at Volume 1 and comb through all of what was happening and do every possible fun thing we could find. And now, of course, they live here, so now they think, oh, well, this isn't as fun as it was before. And, of course, they're older, too, so they kind of have conflated being older and not doing all these, they're not as interested in sledding at Pinehurst. And, we would always go to the YMCA and have so much fun swimming in the small pool. And now my daughter's a lifeguard at the YMCA, which is also great, but it's not as much fun as just splashing around. So for them, it's kind of funny because now they consider it more just regular life. But it's been a really great transition for us. Everybody has been able to plug in different aspects of the community. My husband is doing the Chamber's Leadership Eau Claire program. He's also auditioning for every community theater and children's theater production that comes along, just because Eau Claire is an easy place to be. It's easy to get around. It's easy to meet people. We have a little more time in our day because we're not fighting traffic and having to work extra hard just to pay the bills. It's an affordable place to live. It's a place that has so many organizations for youth, and that just lets kids, it's like so many options, and many of them are free or affordable, especially through the school district's summer program. And so all my kids and my husband and myself as well are really happy to be here and just to experience everything that Eau Claire has to offer. And on a personal note, it's really fun to be in the place where I grew up. I didn't really appreciate how much fun that would be and how much it feels like I'm really home. So I work with a lot of people. Very few people are from Eau Claire. Even though they've been here longer in recent years, I still feel like I have some historical knowledge of, what was a store and a place in 1980 or what happened when Oakwood Mall opened and the theme song. And so that's been really fun, running into teachers. And I had a 3rd grade teacher who sent me a card saying how happy she was that I became city manager. There was I think my mom and some of her friends and neighbors were among the League of Women Voters. And I believe, if I remember the story correctly, they brought my bassinet and sat it on the table for the meetings. And a lot of those women, especially, I've just reached out and said, I'm just so proud that we have a woman city manager, and that I know who she is, and I knew her when she was a baby, and it's just they didn't think that would be possible, way back in the 70s when they were sitting around that table. So, yeah, that's been really fun.
So you came back in 2020, and you took the city manager job this spring. So did you have that even in mind when you moved here, or how did you end up being city manager after being here a couple of years?
So I was in a community that has a strong mayor form of government. Somerville is 83,000, and it doesn't have any kind of appointed administrator. It has just the mayor. Our particular mayor was there for many, many years, and so he really had the skill set of a manager or administrator. And I had as a dream to run for mayor after he left the position. Or to be manager, executive of a community. And so that was the path that I have been on for probably the last 10 years, that goal. But then having the chance to be in my own hometown, that's like a dream job. It's just every day I wake up and I think, oh my goodness, I can't believe that I got this chance. I feel just so honored.
So how is Somerville different than Eau Claire? Obviously, you've been in some other places, like you mentioned, Georgia and Philadelphia. How is Somerville different than Eau Claire, and how does your municipal experience carry over from there?
Yeah, so I actually, because we have visited Eau Claire for so many years, I always am crosswalking the two in my head because I feel very connected to both and care a lot about the people and the places in both. So they have some things in common. They are both winners of the All-America City Award in the last about 6 years. They're both college towns, have a really interested, engaged community. Great people, of course. The differences are that the main difference is that Somerville is 4 square miles, so it's about 20,000 people per square mile, and that changes the community in some important ways. One is that it makes it very lively, very vibrant. So if you walk out your door, you're guaranteed to have many interactions with people. And, 70% are good and 30% are bad. But it's just, it's hard to be lonely there. You can just sit on your stoop and have conversations with people one after another. It's also very diverse. So in the school district, half the population speaks another language at home, which is really fun and exciting and was such a fun experience for my kids going to school there. It means you get to eat a lot of good food. The whole world comes to you. You can just travel down the street and visit, 5 different countries by walking into grocery stores or restaurants or having conversations with people, and that's really fun. It also means that the density allows there to be an investment in public infrastructure in a way that's a lot harder in a spread out city. So even though there's very few acres of open space per person in Somerville, those parks are amazing because a lot of taxpayers support that investment. So absolutely like real destination kind of parks. There's also public transit that's really accessible. So my family didn't have a car for 8 years, and so we were able to function because there's 2 grocery stores each within 2 blocks of our house, and our elementary school was right next to our house. So that's a really different dynamic. But there's some challenges with that kind of community as well. The main one is that it's incredibly expensive. So the real estate is just astronomical, and that's probably the main challenge. So even though it's very diverse, it's becoming less diverse as people are kind of have to move out of the city. And yeah, there's also many rats in Somerville. That I've been appreciating that there are not rats here in Oak Claire.
That's not on the city logo either, I'm sure. So,
no.
Well, you had another chamber connection there because the All-American City application came through a Leadership Eau Claire group.
Nice. So, yeah.
That was fun. So you mentioned a strong mayor system, and here in Eau Claire we don't have a mayor. And a lot of people say, well, why is that? How does that work? They hear about manager council system, but do you have sort of an elevator speech when people say, well, why doesn't Eau Claire have a mayor? How do you explain our system of government?
I don't know. I don't know exactly the history of why Eau Claire doesn't have a mayor. I can say, though, that there are some pros and cons that people consider. And I know when I was in Somerville, I was always sort of wishing that we would convert to a manager form of government. And now that I'm in Eau Claire, I can see the benefits of the mayor form of government. There's a lot in common. It depends mostly on the personality of the leader. So in my former community, the mayor was very much of a manager in terms of his thought. And you could have a manager that also has a strong personality and wants to do some of the things that a mayor might do, like build community or like be expressive or something like that. The main thing is in a manager form, it's completely nonpartisan. So I can't in any way be part of any kind of like political fundraising or advocacy. So that's an important difference. But that's true also even in a mayor form. It's a nonpartisan race, and so like the municipal government generally tries to help everybody. It doesn't matter whether what, and that's one really fun thing about municipal government is that it is nonpartisan, that you don't have to worry about what people's politics are when you think about street condition or park maintenance or even schools or that's really exciting. This is our community. It really doesn't matter the politics, and so I think it's quite similar.
So in Eau Claire, you are the city manager, and we have city staff. So a couple questions related to that. So what is the size of the city staff? And then on the council side of things, we have a city council president who's elected by the voters and 10 other city council members. So what is the role of you as the manager and having the staff of the city, and what is the role of the city council with the president and the rest of the council?
So there are about 500 city staff, and it's a little complicated, but they are within the hierarchy of the city manager. So I would supervise the directors, and the directors supervise supervisors, et cetera, down or to the frontline workers. There are, however, it's a little more complicated than that because the library is sort of autonomous. The health department is autonomous and shared with the county, and the police and fire also report to a public safety commission. So it's not. It's perhaps not as straightforward as in a private corporation, but the idea is that the executive is trying to coordinate and supervise everything that's happening. In reality, it's an aspect of municipal government is that it's extremely broad horizontally in functions. So it ranges from fire to recreation to tax bills to assessing. It's just like the number of things you'd have to be an expert in or just have an understanding of to really, assertively supervise all these functions is so broad. It's quite hard to do that, and so it's perhaps a little different than a situation where an executive is generally managing a set of functions that are related or more closely related. So that's something to think about. And then of course I have these 11 supervisors who are the council members, and they may not agree with each other. And they really are not even supposed to be talking about policy unless they're in a publicly noticed meeting. And so it's kind of it's sort of an art to try to figure out what next steps to do, given that there are many, many functions supervised and these 11 supervisors of me, as well as many community partners that also have opinions and that kind of thing.
So the two highest positions in city government are you as the city manager and Terry Weld as the city council president on the policy side. So how would you explain how you work with the city council president and the rest of the council to sort of do your job?
So President Weld and I meet every week, and we review the upcoming agendas and anything going on in the city. And just to note, I've just been so happy to get to work with Terry. He's just such a person with a huge heart and passion, and incredibly level-headed and even-keeled and really kind and respectful. So that's been a really great part of the job. I think he's really the sort of team leader of the council. And he if somebody had a complaint about me, they would talk to the president, and then he would try to work it out, and as well as vice versa. So that's, I think, the main role of the president.
So you talked about sort of the complicated nature of a city because of the broad types of things a city does, maybe contrasting with a company that has one mission. So tell us about your team. How many people report directly to you, and how do you work with them, and how do you spend your time on a typical day?
Yeah, so that's been absolutely one of or the most fun part of the job has been working with the department heads and the staff in the city. It's clear that the city is very well run. It's not a broken, there's nothing broken about the city, what people are doing. There's no weak link. It's a really well run city. And so it's been just such a joy to get to step into that. I do think the financing mechanisms that the state governs are broken, but the actual work of the city and the staff is pretty extraordinary. The directors are people like the police chief, the fire chief, the finance director, the HR director, the IT director, community development, community services, and then Dave Solberg is the engineering director, and he's also the deputy city manager, and he's been just a fantastic partner in working through all of the issues that come up. And we have many meetings that try to tackle issues, and that's so talking, thinking, visiting to different parts of the city. One of my main goals is to increase the city's ability to undertake performance management for the coordination of all city service delivery. And I believe that's important to use these tools because of the very broad nature of municipal government. Because I can't be an expert in all these different functions. My goal is to create a performance management unit that can actually work with each department, each director to develop, so that we all develop a deep understanding of each department's and each division's daily work, from the finances of it, the activity data, the projects that they're working on, and then how those projects relate to other divisions, community issues. That's something that I've worked on for many years in my career. It's a focus area of mine. Going back to this idea that I believe that we need to rationalize or make government run extremely efficiently with every one of these precious public dollars that we spend, so that it helps everybody, and most especially people who are disproportionately affected.
All right, so that kind of gets into my next question. Actually, was going to be, what are some of the things you feel like you've accomplished in the first few months in your job, and what are some of the top priorities that you have that you feel like either are successes or you're moving towards?
I came into the job thinking the most important thing I should do is not break anything, because as I mentioned, it's a very it's a high-performing city. So that has been my top goal, is to support relationships and make sure that I don't derail anything that's working. The top priority is the fiscal stability of the city, and it's been our focus. It's something we think about all day, and I think about all night, and probably many others do as well. So because of the way which I won't repeat this because many of us learned all about this during the referendum discussions, but the way municipal government is funded is very challenging, and it really limits our ability to keep up with the rising costs through inflation and the continually growing city of Eau Claire, so the needs that come with a growing city. So that creates a structural deficit. And Eau Claire has historically, as I understand it, been very incremental or very kind of gradual about making any kind of changes. We don't want to, because as I'm mentioning, things work well. It's not easy. It's not like a turnaround situation where you can come up, let's just cut the fat, and there isn't really any fat to cut. So we're trying to think about the bigger changes, restructuring that will be not too painful, but still allow us to close that structural deficit. And that's really been the focus of a lot of the discussions. Some of the projects I'm pleased that happened. I don't know that I deserve credit for it, but that we were able to move forward with the referendum to make decisions about make a plan for the ARPA spending. That we're finished the budget. That's, of course, we had to finish the budget, but it was a very compressed time frame because I came in kind of in the middle of it, and then our finance director retired, and we got a new finance director who's absolutely amazing, and we had a referendum the same year, so it was an unusual budget year. Another part I am happy that we're focusing on. I don't think there's anything to claim credit for, but really focusing on employee well-being. So there was an employee survey administered, and we looked at those results really carefully, and then have been working with each department to set goals related to the concerns that employees expressed, as well as to address some issues on the citywide basis. And so I'm really pleased that we're prioritizing employees' needs, because I believe they feel that their workload just keeps growing and growing and growing. Their kind of buying power in terms of their wages keeps falling, as well as benefits, as we know, like people don't have retiree health benefits anymore and that kind of thing. So the reasons why people went into the public sector are kind of eroding. So really trying to understand why do they want to keep showing up for work, and what are they part of here in Eau Claire, and how can we make sure that they're happy and healthy and able to have a great experience working here. I'm really happy about that focus.
So at the Chamber and through the business community, we try to pay attention to some of the things that make a healthy city, make it important to us. And we know one big change that's coming is the city has decided to rewrite the zoning code.
Yeah.
And that probably, to most laymen, that sounds kind of boring.
Right.
But how important is that, and how do you see that coming about?
Yeah, so that's, like you said, people might not realize how big of a deal that is, but it is, it's a really... it's one of the most significant steps a council can take because, and the reason why is it's saying that whatever your, of course, people's homes are their most precious, place in the world, and they care a lot about it. And that means your particular home has a certain kind of zoning code attached to it. You could be a store, you can be a house, you can be a hospital. Now we're going to say, oh, well, we might change what can happen on your property. And that's why it's really just a tremendous community engagement process because people care so much about what they can do in their own home. And so it means basically talking to everybody about every single parcel in the city. And that's the challenging part of it. The exciting part about it is it's the operating system for the city. So it tells us the rules by which we can develop more affordable housing or have permit-ready sites for businesses we may want to attract, or like certain parts of the city that we want to have more of like a makerspace or fabrication areas. And so it's really just a fantastic opportunity to re-envision or think about what we want every part of our community to be like and to do. And so I'm excited that it's happening, and being able to fund it through ARPA is, I think, going to be one of the most transformative ways that we're spending our ARPA funding.
So it's going to be hard and difficult and complicated, but the outcome is going to be worth it.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
So this is called Business Matters, and one of the things we always ask our guests is, why does business matter in Eau Claire? So to you personally, or to the city of Eau Claire, as its staff leader, or organizational leader, why is business important, or why does business matter here?
I'll say that what impresses me so much about Eau Claire, and what I think is really unique, is the nature of the business community. So first, how engaged business members are in every aspect of community life, from serving in really significant roles in volunteering their time and leadership roles on nonprofit boards, involved also in kind of visioning the community. So there's more kind of economic development and business-oriented organizations, like planning organizations here, than I think in the vast majority of communities. So the fact that those business leaders are talking to each other to think about how can we define this region and attract the businesses that will be good partners here in the community is really exciting. Also, what I'm impressed with in Eau Claire is the diversity of businesses. So we have strong retail, we have strong agriculture, we have technology, we have these amazing small like retail in our downtown. The revitalization of the downtown is just such a joy. We have arts and the Banbury, the kind of just like walking through Banbury is just such a fantastic experience. And you want to go into every single, see, what are they doing in there? And just how that reinventing of Banbury opened up opportunities for hundreds of small businesses. The work that Aaron White and EDC and Gateway are doing to attract, as well as other economic development groups, to attract the major players that are going to be backbone of both our employers and our municipal finance. So it just seems like one of the most strong network infrastructure of business community of any place I've certainly ever been. And not just because I'm here, but I do think that the chamber is like really has to get the lion's share of credit for how functional the business community is. I've never seen a chamber that is so thoughtfully led and so broad, and it's footprint that it has in trying to bring people together, not just on business, but on life and community and culture and on all the big issues. And so I think that if I had to think of the why Eau Claire is so strong, it is partly related to this history of a strong middle class with lots of different types of contributors being welcome and having a seat at the table. But I think certainly a big share of it is the leadership role that the Chamber plays in helping to guide all of those people.
Well, we appreciate those kind words as we end our broadcast today. So thanks for joining us, Stephanie.
Thanks for having me.
We do want to mention a couple things coming up. We are going to celebrate our Chamber year in January on the 25th. So January 25th, our annual meeting on that evening at the Pablo Center at the Confluence. It's really a must-attend event of the year, so we want to kick the year off with that, so join us then. I'll also mention from a policy standpoint, we have our annual Chippewa Valley Rally with our Chippewa Falls and Menominee Chambers. We'll be going to Madison on February 22nd. Look that up and put that on your calendar as well. So we're signing off today from the Wind Technology Studio. We want to thank Stephanie for being with us today. We thank our media sponsor, Royal Credit Union, and we thank you, the listener, for taking time to join us. I'm Scott Rogers. Have a great day.